adventure, activity, wonder, danger, horror, pain, suffering, agony, death, disease, death, angel food cake. Ow! You parasite!
Parasitism, a symbiotic relationship in nature where one organism is harmed and the other one benefits. It varies from simple carnivorous or predator behavior, as the organism that is harmed is often kept alive for the majority, if not the entirety of the relationship. These relationships can be found all throughout the planet, ranging from animals, bacteria, protists, HR workers, and of course fungi and plants. There are a handful of plants in Plants vs. Zombies that also happen to fall under the definition of a parasite, thus we can ask ourselves the question for this challenge: can you beat Plants vs. Zombies 2 with only parasites? So first let's start off with what plants I'm allowed to use. Given my general knowledge in biology, and as a parasite myself, I am allowed to use any plant that could be argued falls under the definition of a parasite. It doesn't matter what form of parasitism it falls under, there's several if you didn't know, as long as it is still just a parasite. Thus, plants that either drain the life of zombies, or mutate or change zombies for themselves, transform the zombie entirely, granted that it's further propagating the plant, or deal some form of effect to the zombies that would be considered one-sidedly parasitic, is allowed. There will obviously be some debate for what counts later on, but I'll stick to the more obvious ones to start out. As for the rules, they will be the same rules and rubric as my Summoner Challenge: conveyor belts, pre-picked missions, boss waves, and minigames. Where it's impossible to bring a parasite do not count. Furthermore, any plants already on the map are free for me to use however I please. As for the rubric tiers of doability, if we forgot, Tier 1 is if it's completely doable, where I don't have to use anything other than standard unbuffed level 1 parasitic plants to win. Tier 2 is mostly doable if I have to upgrade any of them. Tier 3, if I have to buy plant food or buff any plant, then it's somewhat doable. And for Tier 4, if I can't do it from there and I have to use power-ups or non-parasitic plants, I actively fail the challenge. And with that being said, we got started, with this time actually starting on day 1 in Ancient Egypt, because I'm not locked, but pretty much all 5 of the first missions in Egypt are automatic wins anyways due to infinite lawnmowers, so I'll just use it as well as several days after as a chance to introduce the first 2 parasites I'll be using. Tomb Tangler and Vampircini, these 2 plants are often considered the worst in the entire game, and I'm not going to be completely honest here, I disagree when it comes to Tomb Tangler, as I think he's more than worth his money, as he is basically a cheaper walnut that, although he can only be planted on and infesting zombie items, he also slows and randomly eats zombies, making him a great defensive plant, all for only 25 sun. I know he can only be used in some worlds, but I don't understand the Tomb Tangler hate. Tomb Tangler is the best. As for Vampircini though, I have nothing nice to say about him at all, and I have to say he 100% deserves the title as worst plant in the game, and I willingly did the reroll thing for him, knowing that he would likely be worthless for this challenge. As for what he is a defensive plant that costs 100 sun and takes several seconds to even activate, spending that time lifestealing around him. This lifesteal attack is abysmally low damage, and you will need 3 whole Vampircinis to take out a single unarmored zombie. And since he doesn't activate while lifestealing, unless you are almost 3 whole tiles ahead of the zombies, you aren't going to be blocking with him reliably. Once he activates, he never does his lifesteal again, instead just sitting in his defensive position with that stupid smug-ass grin on his face, acting like he did something important. And lastly, I would say worst of all, but pretty much everything about him is pretty worse, his toughness isn't even that high, being not even 3/4 that of a walnut. But since I have no other parasites available, even though I have 2 others who I could add in right now, it was just Tomb Tangler and Vampircini through Egypt. And I'm not going to lie, these 2 definitely did not do bad together, or at least Tomb Tangler didn't, as they were able to cohesively punch through most things that Egypt threw at them. And yeah, Vampircini was garbage, but since there wasn't really anything else to spend money on early game, and since Tomb Tangler's only 25 and can only be planted on graves, they kind of served as secondary walnuts for Tomb Tanglers, waiting for them to take out the zombies. And it was honestly just bizarre how far I was getting through Ancient Egypt with only these 2 plants, though I am keeping in mind that this is still just Ancient Egypt. One of the more cool things though was that with these missions and the nature of Tomb Tangler being only able to spawn on top of zombie items, most notably tombstones, was that he actually ended up forming a symbiotic relationship with the Tomb Raiser zombie, waiting for him to spawn more tombs just for the purpose of us planting Tomb Tanglers on them, thus causing us to more effectively win on these worlds. Furthermore, Tomb Tangler is also a bit of a sniper, as when plant fooded, he will randomly consume average 2 zombies in the attack, but this isn't as random as you think it is, as there were numerous points points where he directly attacked the zombies that were furthest down on the lane, oftentimes saving the entire day due to his quick attacking. Once again, I don't know why people hate Tomb Tanglers so much. And before I knew it, we were already a majority of the way through ancient Egypt, and not only was I literally just using Tomb Tangler and Vampircini, but didn't even feel the need to mention individual days yet, because we were just able to inch out wins the first try on every single one. This was until day 18, which we unfortunately were not able to do with Tomb Tangler and Vampircini alone, as it's a plan your defense mission. Now, I do believe that Vampircini and Tomb Tangler could have taken this if it was just in regards to the zombie horde, but since there's no Tomb Raiser zombies, and you can't plant Tomb Tanglers before the round starts, I just don't see the math working in our favor here. And I tried this out a few times, but eventually decided we needed to bring in the third member of our team, Sporeshroom, who is not a great plant by any means, but is more than a competent enough of a shooter, and the fact that it parasitizes any zombie it finishes off by transforming them into a copy of itself. Day 19 was just depressing because there were no tombs or tomb raisers, thus no way to spawn Tomb Tangler, meaning we need to use Sporeshroom again, and he kinda renders the whole day pretty easily, as once again he is a more than competent shooter. Day 20, protect endangered plants, we once again have to use Sporeshroom because Tomb Tangler can't deal with all the torch zombies at once, and Vampircini can't deal with any of them at all. Day 21, Tombs and Tomb Raiser zombies, meaning Tomb Tangler Vampircini duo is back again, and we wipe the floor with the entire mission, finishing up the whole thing pretty fast. Day 22, with Tomb Raisers and Tombs already on the field, we were once again able to beat the mission with only Tomb Tangler and Vampircini. Dude, I swear, this plan is not as bad as people are saying it is. And day 23 went the exact same way, with a giant X for us to plant Tomb Tanglers on, allowing for yet another almost effortless victory, with the only thing we couldn't beat was the Gargantuar at the end, which is a bit worrying early on as I currently have no way to bust Gargs, but for now it's a non-issue for us. However, day 24 was yet another plan your defense mission, so we unfortunately yet again had to use Sporeshroom to rapidly turn the entire mission into a secondary apocalypse. Day 25, boss fight, we threatened to post Dr. Zomboss's Xbox 360 live voice chats on Twitter, and we are back on to PARASITES, where we unfortunately cannot use Tomb Tangler at all, simply because there's no zombie items for this world. So, day 1 on of PARASITES, we were back to basically using nothing but Sporeshrooms. And so beginning our trek through PARASITES, there's really not much to say early on, as Sporeshroom once again is just a competent plan, especially early game, capable of easily dealing with all the zombies on a world as low as PARASITES. So much so that pretty much every single day was going the exact same way. I let the first zombies in the wave get really close before planting Sporeshroom, so we get it to immediately turn it into a second Sporeshroom in the lane for free, and by the time the zombies start consistently showing up, we already have a pretty fortified defense, even without the needed sun capital to do so. Day 7 introduced the barrel roller zombie, which, if they get deep enough, they can be a problem, as when they blow up, they send imps into the 2 adjacent lanes. But don't forget the fact that Sporeshroom shoots its shots overhead, meaning there's absolutely no defense that the barrel itself provides for the barrel roller zombie, and thus they get pretty quickly sniped.
Get shot! There's a sniper around this corner.
Day 8 was a boss wave conveyor belt, so here's your first fun fact of this series. Sporeshroom has over 100 Gooner games on Steam. Day 9 we were back to pretty much the exact same thing, Sporeshrooming early on to get free Sporeshrooms, and then using that same hyperinflation to bolster our numbers and an overwhelming advantage against the zombies. Day 10 went the exact same way. Also, to clarify, me using Sporeshroom this early on, if you didn't watch my Summoners series, you can get Sporeshroom early on just by rent-rolling its seeds enough times, so therefore it's fair game. Day 11 went the same too, but I did end up losing some lawnmowers since I played too greedily early on, and the fact that unlike Tomb Tangler, Sporeshroom's plant food effect is totally random and almost never hits what you want it to. Day 12 was a coconut cannon mission. Fun fact, Vampircini routinely steals blood bags and Capri Suns from hospitals and local Walmarts just to give action to the fact of how badly he f***ing sucks. And day 13 we are on to the first big hurdle of this challenge, the Sun Requirement mission.
Submit to a credit check.
Come back when you're a little, richer.
Now, most of you probably already guessed this as a sun producer I could use, but in case you haven't, I've decided that we will start with Sundew Tangler, a 100 cost invulnerable plant that ensnares a zombie when it walks over it, ignoring helmets and leeching about half its health, producing a sun in the process. They have fairly quick cooldown, but zombies will also stop to eat other zombies out of the Tangler's grasp, finishing the zombie in the process, but also preventing the sun drop. Now, I don't think Sundew Tangler is a particularly bad plant. However, as a sun producer alone, I think it's among the worst in the entire game, if not the worst. And that's the core issue, that Sundew Tangler, as our only sun producer, just might end up falling short late game. Fortunately, Sundew's plant food ability allows it to snag multiple zombies at once and rapidly leech sun off of them, allowing it to move significantly faster on the sun scale, and after trying this several times in a row with completely flooding the walkable boarding bridge with Sundew Tanglers, we barely produced enough sun to make it past day 13. Moving on to day 13, we weren't out of the woods yet by any means, but for now we were safe punching through yet another plan your defense mission. Day 15, don't trample the flowers, and a free 3-peater shows up, and we relish in the fact that we now have a sun produce on our side, and additionally not one that feels like it breaks the sanctity of the whole f***ing challenge by making it completely non-challenging. Day 16 was protect the endangered plants, and in addition to Sundew Tangler and Sporestrom, we get probably the most competent placement of an endangered plant ever, being Springbean, who basically lets us effortlessly beat this day by plant fooding it to knock every horde of zombies that shows up into the water immediately. Day 17 was beat 20 zombies in 30 seconds, which sounds intimidating, but we just waited till we had one of those hordes, and we had beaten over half of the requirement to complete it, and then just plant fooded multiple Sporeshrooms, and bada boom, the world's done. Day 18, conveyor belt, pre-picked plants, blah blah blah, and prepare as a jankin' dealer. And then we get to day 19, which is another sun cost mission, and you guessed it, I've been stumped for this episode. As it's also don't let the zombies trample the flowers, and with a plant that relies so much on overtime zombies, it's taking pretty much all of my focus to even survive the wave without them trampling the flowers, much less making the sun requirement. And I tried this over a dozen times, and I'm worried that this in itself might be possible with Sundew Tangler alone, without me boosting it, which would immediately bump the challenge down to tier 3, being only somewhat doable. But it's either that, or I try to find another sun producer that's competent enough, and still falls under the definition of a parasite! But because of this stump, I'm gonna have to call it here, with the fate of this challenge being completely uncertain. Will Sundew Tangler be able to get its shit together? And if it does, will it even be enough for the rest of this challenge? And what horrible memes do I have up my sleeve? The only way to find out is to watch the next part.
Your puny schmelling balls are no match for mine.
You really think you're fast enough?
That's what the gas is for.
Okay, and that's bleach batter. Okay, you've made mustard gas.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to seeing if we can beat Plants vs. Zombies 2 with only parasites. Previously, we were able to complete virtually all of ancient Egypt using only Tomb Tangler and Vampircini, and we actually got past the initial first sun requirement mission on day 13 of Pirate Seas with only Sundew Tangler. However, our problems were only just beginning, as day 19 was another sun requirement mission, and as I soon realized due to another creator's challenge, that beating this day's sun requirement with Sundew Tangler alone is mathematically impossible, and we needed another sun-producing parasite. Now, I did come up with a solution for this, but first I want to discuss the big idea that other people had, and that was Sunbeam. People were arguing that this could be considered as a parasite, as they believed the bean itself, causing the zombie to drop sun, was seen as how it was reproducing inside of the zombie, causing it to leak sun because of it. I think this is a similar argument to Empire, being it morphs the zombie into something else, and in turn makes it more susceptible to repeated dosages of the Empire, but largely I can't guarantee that the sun bean is reproducing itself, and that the sun is not just an excretion of its natural function. However, I did end up trying to beat the day with Sundew Tangler and Sunbean, and I struggled quite a bit. So I decided just for once, if I use walnuts, you can actually meet the sun requirement for this day, so it is mathematically possible, but it's very generous. Fortunately, I did come up with another sun producer who I actually feel falls more under the definition of a parasite than Sunbean, and that is our old overpowered friend, Solar Sage.
What is it? Stay there. I'm coming.
Now, a lot of you guessed that Solar Sage could be counted as a parasite, but very few people actually correctly guessed why. Basically, Solar Sage is a mind that mentally takes over a zombie and causes it to walk in the opposite direction, dropping sun along the way. That alone isn't parasitic. However, what makes it parasitic is the fact that the zombie that it was turned into has the chance of turning other zombies into sages as well, making it infectious and in turn making Solar Sage a microparasite. However, like the Summoner playthrough, I only plan on using Solar Sage on missions where it's absolutely necessary, as even though I'm in for a much harsher fight than that, there are Sun production days where I can still get by using only Sundew Tangler, like day 20, where if I just spam them and boost them at the right time, we got it the first try. Day 21, the third Sun production day in a row, which we once again have to use Solar Sage for, not only as it is only one huge wave day, but it is also defeat 5 zombies in 5 seconds, which Sundew Tangler just is not up to the task for. And then we get to day 22, and this is the same day I struggled on greatly, even with the Summoner playthrough, and I'm not gonna lie, I thought this was gonna be the end of the challenge here, as it's a plan your defense mission with 90% of the attackers being cannons that repeatedly shoot out massive waves of extremely violent go-juice addicted toddlers right into your back lines. Now, in normal playthroughs, there are limitless ways to beat this world. However, after extensive testing and previous playthroughs, I am completely certain there is not a single combination of Spore Shroom and Vampircini that wins this day. So naturally, that means I'm going back to looking for more possible parasites, and the first idea was Imp Pear, considering it as a parasite for the same reason Sunbeam is, as it turns any zombie that eats it into an imp and causes any imp that eats it to shard itself to death. The debate on whether or not Imp Pear is a parasite is not needed for now though, as I wasn't able to beat it with it anyways. So my next stop was Perfume Shroom, someone suggested it to me, as it manipulates dinosaurs into doing its bidding, and unlike Hypno Shroom, it isn't eaten by the dinosaur. As of a recent update, it also spawns a raptor to help if there are no other dinosaurs on the field. The raptor did not help early enough to call it worth it though, so then we officially busted out the cauliflower and enchantment. You can call both of these social parasites, as they manipulate other organisms into doing their bidding, and they don't benefit the zombie in any way with this action, and once again, like Hypno Shroom, they aren't being consumed by the zombie, so they aren't psychedelics. And even with the enchantment buffed cauliflowers, they just have absolutely no AoE to defend against the imps. So I was officially entering into the desperation mode, and tried to rationalize some stupid argument in my head that Kiwi Beast could count as a parasite, as it requires a zombie to attack it in order to get stronger. I was able to win with this, stay with it, but Kiwi Beast clearly isn't a parasite. However, after searching through pretty much the entire almanac multiple times, I came across a plant that I would count as a parasite for call as a parasite for this mission, and that plant is Daisy Chain.
Daisy, Daisy, give me your
mustard gas.
Now, Daisy Chain is a pretty interesting plant with a few gimmicks, but let me explain why it can be seen as a parasite. Daisy Chain is a standard shooting plant that actually grows over time, each growth cycle causing it to do more damage, and also releasing a plume of stunning gas. It also releases periodically mustard gas after it reaches its final stage. However, what makes it parasitic is that it only grows when it's attacking zombies or zombie items. Not ending them or getting the last hit, but merely dealing damage to zombies is enough to cause Daisy Chain to grow, and it needs to do this to grow as well. Thus, we are looking at a leech-like creature or a false cleaner fish, both of which function as ectoparasites. All in all, I see it perfectly fit to count Daisy Chain, and going all in with it, they were exactly what I needed to beat this day. Moving on, day 23, we have another Don't Trample the Flowers, and beat 8 zombies in 10 seconds. And I did fail this the first time just due to Vampircini not being fast enough, but round 2 we just spammed Sundew Tangler, had Vampircini pre-placed, and our new friend Daisy Chain dealt with everything else. Day 24, protect 2 spring beans, and once again I failed it the first time because I didn't budget the sun well enough, but the second time around I corrected that little error and we made it out just fine. And with day 25 being us just throwing it back for Zomboss while he screams at me telling me to stop ruining Thanksgiving, we were officially done with Pirate Seas. Moving on to Wild West with our team of 5-1, because we still can't use Tomb Tangler, we do pretty much the identical thing I did on the Summoner only playthrough in regards to Spore Shroom, and that is, I just put Spore Shroom on a minecart and bait the zombie into walking all the way back before turning him, so I can get an entire free column of free Spore Shrooms. And it actually becomes even easier with the help of Sundew Tangler, as it changes standard unarmored zombies into having only 1 shot left for them, allowing us to more precisely get the Spore Shroom spawn wherever I want. And that's overall how it went the first several days, with nothing of any significant note happening until day 6, and that's only because it's a plan your defense day with the heavily armored zombies, but with a fully upgraded Daisy Chain with its consistent damage and its stuns, and 3 Spore Shrooms helping out whatever lane needs them, we were able to get through it perfectly fine. Day 7 went identically to most of the other days, Spore Shroom and Sundew Tangler Rush, you know the rest, and Day 8 was the ultimate battle, mandatory skip.
Remember me, Jake?
No.
Day 9 is Survive with the Given Plants. Sunbeam gives out his nudes randomly and has a court case on February 12th, 2026 because of it. Day 10 started off well, but then I remembered that this is the day that releases Chicken Zombie. And it may seem pretty grim because Spore Shroom, Daisy Chain, and Sundew can all only target a single chicken at once. However, this is where Vampircini actually comes in clutch, because on top of his initial placement dealing AoE damage, when plant fooded he actually does that blow attack indefinitely, allowing him to serve as a mobile chicken blender, thus saving the whole day from Chicken Zombie. Day 11, another 500 Sunday. We make a single Spore Shroom and beat the entire day effortlessly. Day 12 was a Doo-Doo Corral mission, conveyor belt. Day 13 was supposed to be the introduction of Bull Imps, but they were stun-locked so viciously by the Daisy Chains and Sundew Tanglers that they couldn't even have a chance to buck the Imps off. Day 14 was a whole bunch of chicken zombies, but they are rendered totally irrelevant by the Vampircini defense grid I had set up. I was actually glad I spent the time to get this thing now, as he ended up saving our skin in Wild West. Day 15 was don't lose more than 2 plants, and that disqualifies Spore Shroom, so we just ended up using Daisy Chain and Sundew Tangler, because for some reason Sundew Tangler is literally immortal. Day 16 was Protect an Endangered Walnut on a minecart, which you're supposed to use to stall the waves while you prepare and buck bull zombies off, but I ended up just letting a lawnmower go and played through the rest of the day rather easily. Day 17, another Don't Trample the Flowers, but I forgore the first time, but next time, I shamelessly spammed free Spore Shrooms before changing my spam to Daisy Chain and Sundew Tangler, watching my forces stutter step the zombies so perfectly once again the bulls couldn't even get on this. The stage. Day 18 was the infamous Plan Your Defenses mission for my Summoner Only playthrough. However, this time around we have more than an adequate simple solution for both the chickens and the prospectors, and with my Daisy Chains in the back and my Vampircinis charging up their nano machines in the front to insta-zap the chickens, we won this day first try.
You can't hurt me, chicken jockey.
Day 19, lose no more than 2 plants and spend no more than 2,000 sun. The solution here is pretty easy. We just pop the 2 back lanes full of daisy chains and then have 1 Sundew Tangler to help get any armored zombie closer to death. Day 20, conveyor belt mission. Sundew Tangler has a side job shoving cat girls into a wood chipper. Day 21 is don't trample the flowers and don't spend more than 1,750 sun. We all know where this is going. I Spore Shroom economic inflation to my way to victory. Day 22, survive with the given plants. Half-Life 3 is never coming out. Day 23, don't lose more than 2 plants or trample the flowers. Horrible time to get a Spore Shroom, and I promptly lost the first time because of it. But one quick correction later, and we were back on track with Daisy Chain, and had to generate a whole Vampircini defense grid just in case. Day 24 was the big heart of the Wild West. A triple protection mission of walnut minecarts, and we have chicken zombies coming too, along with early game hordes, meaning we had to not only set up a secondary defense grid while protecting the walnuts, but also have adequate shooters to deal with the hordes before they finish off our walnuts. This took quite a few tries, and I had conceded to just giving up my first lawnmowers to try and appease the situation economic-wise. The eventual solution, though, was after I got my Vampircini nano machines grid set up, was to stack the walnuts on top of each other, and giving some Enclave power armor with a plant food, so my other plants had adequate time to murder everything. And with day 25 being the boss day, I gave Zomba some non-consensual sock therapy, and we were done with the Wild West.
Do it!
And then we move on to Frostbite Caves, the next real challenge of our playthrough. Frostbite Caves' main gimmick is that it will frequently cause snowstorms to appear, which will freeze plants and require them to either be heated up or shot out. However, we don't have any warm plants currently, and we also don't have any plants that can shoot behind themselves, so if I have a plant that freezes in the back lane, it's pretty much screwed. Fortunately, Sundew Tangler continues to be immune to everything, including freezing, for some reason. Thus, our strategy early game will be trying to get as many Sundew Tanglers on the board as possible, as not only do they help with the sun, kind of, but they're also capable of dealing with armored zombies relatively well, usually only needing 2 or 3 doses to take out bucket heads or cone heads. Day 6 introduces the first variant of the new challenge of plants, picked for you, as most of them are picked for us, but we are still well able to complete the day with only 2 or 3 plant slots, with me choosing Sundew Tangler and Daisy Chain to blast through the level. Day 7 was a bit of the same as how we've been faring with nothing important to say, and Day 8 was a conveyor belt level. However, Day 9 introduces one of the biggest problems of this world, being the Dodo Rider Imp. It's like a small zombie riding a large chicken. I don't really think there's a name for it though. Anyways, what makes them dangerous is that on top of having decently good health, capable of taking down both my lane shooters if they aren't shooting at them as soon as they arrive, but they can also fly over the tiles that divert the zombies into other lanes. All in all, they're pretty dangerous, mainly because my daisy chains are constantly getting reset due to all the cold snaps that come in, causing me to dig them up and immediately replant them afterwards. However, making it to day 11, I was still pushing my way through on them, barely edging out another win on the first try, which is exactly what day 12 wasn't. Day 12 was rough. It was a plan your defense mission, and given the Arctic cold, I figured I could just do the same thing I did with Tiger Grass with hit and run tactics, but very quickly I felt the equally cold wind of reality hit me, as my plants were not nearly as powerful as the Summoner playthrough once again. My daisy chains are not strong enough at level 1 to handle this, and due to all this stupid Nordic Skyrim ice, most of the daisy chains don't even make it to level 3. Sundew Tangler wouldn't have helped me with the Imp Riders, but they could have at least eaten the armor zombies, but unfortunately it's considered Sun Producer, and therefore it isn't allowed for this mission. That left me really with only Daisy Chain, Vampircini, and Spore Shroom. I tried tactically placing Spore Shroom behind Daisy Chain so it could attack the Imp Riders even if the Daisy Chains got frozen, but pretty much every formation I tried with them just wasn't enough. And after about 12 tries, I threw in the towel and started looking for another parasite. Fortunately, I didn't have to take too long looking, as Cauliflower and Enchantment, who I already mentioned could both be argued as social parasites, or at least Cauliflower can. I don't know, if you want me to redo this day without Enchantment, I still think it counts, but I don't mind being thorough. However, even with these two plants, I was just barely able to squeeze through this fight, but nevertheless we had made it through the big hard day of Frostbite Caves. Day 13. I don't remember if this is the first introduction of the Gargantuar in Frostbite Caves, but he has a handful of imps instead of just one, and that's about it to his significance. It's worth noting at this point that I still have no cut and dried way of busting Gargantuars, but fortunately I remembered that I could auto-activate lawnmowers towards the end of this day. Day 14, another survive with the given plant, so I'm just going to update you on my theory. I'm over halfway done writing it. As a matter of fact, it might even be the next long-form video I post if I rush through it. Day 15 was a bit of a doozy, largely due to it being my own fault though, so it's a defend the plants mission, and rather fortunately it's pepper pults in the corners, meaning I can have daisy chains without them freezing every few seconds. However, we still have the Imp Riders to deal with, and the fact that the zombies will come more quickly on this wave, meaning I have to make sure the pepper pults are protected as fast as possible. I knew the solution, and it was Vampircini, but I kept failing to get them in time because I wanted to have all my daisy chains down, even though this map has an obnoxious amount of armor. Nevertheless, after several tries, which it totally didn't need to be this many, I finally passed through the day. Day 16 was the mandatory Ultimate Battle Day conveyor belt mission, click here to add title. Day 17 just had some already frozen plants for us, and unfreezing them, they did help out a little bit, but ultimately I think we probably had this one in the bag, regardless, so we got through it the first try. And day 18 was Poop Conveyor, so I started electrocuting the general population in a dangerously cheesy way. Day 19 was a most plants picked for us, but this time with 3 slots, but since I've only been really using Sundew Tangler and Daisy Chain anyways, we just played through it pretty easily. And with day 20 being the Neanderthal zombies' big opening, not realizing that my Sundew Tangler also blocks him from advancing with his ice imps, they were very quickly degraded and defeated, just standing as basically another glorified buckethead or ice head. And we got through the day pretty well, and it was here that I decided to call it for now, as we had gotten through all of the big stumps of the challenge so far, and I was now thinking that the Parasites challenge was going to be fully beatable now in its entirety though, at a significantly higher difficulty than my Summoner playthrough.
You've made your last delivery, kid. Sorry you got twisted up in this scene. From where you're kneeling, must seem like the game was rigged from the start. Truth is, the game was an 18-carat run of bad luck.
Alright, we're on to part 3 of beating plants vs. zombies with only parasites. Last episode, we recruited our currently most powerful member, Daisy Chain, in its mustard gas attack, used Vampircinis as walking nanomachines to save the Wild West, and was obnoxiously assaulted by dodo bird riders in the Frostbite Caves. And moving on, we are finishing up Frostbite, but this world still has some flukes left in it that I soon found out. Day 21 was a conveyor belt mission. Okay, we're starting out strong, I see. And Day 22 introduced the Weasel Zombies, dropping a bunch of minions similar to chicken zombies, but having far fewer summons and the weasels having a little bit of health to them, whereas chickens are instant drops, meaning Vampercini won't really help with them that much. However, Sundew Tangler can actually assassinate them, causing them to not drop any weasels at all when they're taken out. I don't know if this was intentional, but I'm gonna make it work for me. Day 23 was help a column of charred guards get hard, but despite what common sense would have you believe, this world was actually first tried, as there wasn't even any point, as there wasn't enough to ice to freeze my daisy chains in the back row anyway. Day 24 was another Produce Sun mission, and believe me, I tried to do this with only Sundew, but it's another one of those missions where I just don't think it's mathematically possible to do it with just Sundew, as unfortunate as that is. But all we needed to do was push ourselves out over the top was with a single Solar Sage, so whatever. Day 25 was a conveyor belt day. Holly Barrier has violated the Geneva Convention on numerous occasions. Day 26 was a rough one though, with a lot of weasel zombies and not a lot of ways to stop them. Overall, it was just a situation where I was consistently at a financial loss throughout pretty much the whole fight, and since dozens of armored zombies also joined the horde, I kept just barely falling short at the end of the day. Day 27 was protect more plant hussy, this time with rutabagas, which I actually failed twice, the first time due to dodo bird Dios flying over to bite their genitals off, and the second time due to the final wave Gargantuar hitting the cha-cha slide towards the end. However, the third time I remembered that because this is a defend your plants, they probably aren't going to Arctic wind freeze them, so I proceeded to just spam daisy chain again. Day 28, I pulled a boom beach because I didn't come with a plan, so I left in defeat. Second try, I did come with a plan, but they still boomed all over my beach. So third time around, I just got annoyed and had just Enchantment join us to help with the few stragglers towards the end. To be honest, from here I should probably just consistently take it with us permanently, considering it's not that OP when it comes to being combined with anything, and we still count it as a parasite. Day 29, survive with the Gibbon plants. Dodo Bird Rider was responsible for lobbying against a bill that banned the usage of artificial intelligence denying health insurance claims. He's not even a shareholder either, he just knew it would destroy people. And day 30, Dr. Zomboss dons his elephant fursuit and sprays this white fluid all over himself while lecturing me about how tough he is, and just like that we were done with Frostbite Caves.
Trying to make this entire generation of boys hard. I actually have a coaching program.
You have been told not to discuss.
And moving on to the Lost City, finally competent sun production for a time, but our problems were far from over. Though, the first 3 or so days went as predictably as you would expect, with no significant issue for us at all. Though, that doesn't last too long, as on day 4 we were already introduced to the Excavator zombie, who is fast and immune to full frontal damage, meaning Daisy Chain's main attack has no effect on him. However, we can still take him out with Spore Shrooms and Sundew Tanglers, and that's what we did, even utilizing my free Spore Shroom tactic to turn them against each other. Day 5, we don't talk about what happened on day 5. Day 6 and 7 were more or less of me starting to put together a strategy now, with Umbrella Zombies and Excavators working in tandem, making it very difficult to deal with them, as one blocks Daisy Chain and the other blocks Spore Shroom. However, neither of them can touch Sundew Tangler, which lets me reliably get rid of one of them, leaving the other one openly vulnerable to an attack. It was going pretty well so far, but that likely wasn't going to last. Day 8, pre-picked plans. Everyone pretend I just gave some extremely depressing news here, and then timestamp it in the comments. Day 10 went expectedly with me just planting Sundew Tangler on all the outer tiles, making them actually competent producers this way, and getting through the day pretty easily. Day 11 was the exact opposite in regards to the sun tiles, with me planting daisy chains on them instead, once again just leaving it to a Crayon Muncher level solution. Day 12 produced 5,000 sun, but there's tons of sun tiles here, and with my Sundew Tangler, we were actually able to get this first try, and with the help of Solar Sage, even with the Gargs at the end. Day 13 and 14 were both stupid, non-counting pre-picked plants and or conveyor belt butthead missions. Click here to add title. Day 15, we were to protect some Akis at the top and bottom row, but since they're more competent shooters than Spore Shrooms, they ended up being more of a help to us than anything, and we got through the whole situation relatively quickly. Day 16 was the ultimate battle day, blah blah poo poo fart butt. Day 17 introduced the Tent Imps, and these are, I think, the first zombie in the entire series so far that can actually harm Sundew Tangler. Since they can't attack Sundew Tangler normally, they just ignore them as soon as they are let go, and they pitch their tents on top of the tile anyways, base, which also happens to destroy the Sundew Tangler in the process. Not the end of the world or anything, but still something we have to worry about now. I kinda dig it though. However, what I don't dig is the inability to place Tomb Tangler on top of them. Dude, I've seen other people do it, why can't I? Day 18, Conveyor Belt Mission. Highway Star is unironically one of the most well-rounded stands in JoJo. Day 19 was a pretty generic day, with the only caveat being that they were trying to sell me on Stalia, but since Daisy Chain releases mustard gas every few seconds, which is basically slightly better Stalia, it's not happening. Day 20, the Giant Z Day, I was originally going to plant a bunch of sundews on all the tiles, but the first parachute rain and me missing one of the zombies made me so angry that I restarted the whole mission. But after that, we busted out the mustard gas and the rest is World War I history. Day 21 isn't even real, Day 21 literally doesn't exist, just like the bodies in the water. Day 22. However, I do recognize the bodies in the water, but I also approve of them being there, thus I will not go inside to assist them. Day 23 was one of the closest days I got first try, with me losing over half my lawnmowers and barely scraping out against the gargantuars at the very end. Though the real danger was the zombies that were being airdropped over everything by all of these gorgeous dragonflies. Day 24 was Don't Trample the Flowers, which I lost 3 times all because of these freaking Tomb Raider rope-swinging zombies. They are significantly higher health than their pirate variants, and they land right next to the flowers, allowing them to walk right over it. The solution ironically ended up being Vampircini yet again, as even though they're pretty useless in all other circumstances, they were also the only plant in our arsenal that can stall the Tomb Raiders long enough due to their high health.
You stupid You're blocking my escape.
Day 25, literally nothing of significance occurred, with the entire day just being a pretty simple defense day where we faced no issue. And day 26 went roughly the same, with the caveat being that there was only one sun tile this time around. But once again, there just wasn't that much resistance. Zomba should really consider capital executions for his more incompetent generals. Day 27 introduced the Crystal Skull Death Laser zombies, who are more than capable of vaporizing several of my plants at once, though with once again the exception being Sundew Tangler. Let that set in that a Death Laser can't destroy Sun Tangler, but a tent can. Day 28 was a government psyop to convince you to purchase a comical amount of useless gemstones. Day 29 was a little bit of everything, but I had a bit of Daisy Chain and Sundew Tangler, and even though it was pretty close, I still just barely was able to inch out a win on the first try. And day 30, oh my god, day 30. You remember how earlier I mentioned the Tomb Raider zombies and how they swing in on ropes and vines, and they were problematic for a trample flower day? Well, this day has significantly more of them, and on top of that, the back 3 columns have nothing but mold colonies, and I have no way of attacking the Tomb Raiders as soon as they get back there. Vampircini can really only stall them, and Sundew Tangler can take them out, but there's far too many of them for a single Sundew Tangler to deal with, also with only a few tiles of grace. But I saw only one way I was going to get past this without resorting to Solar Sage, and that was with enchantment again. Making it through using it to turn any of the zombies that actually do make it past the mold, which is quite a few, allowing me to barely inch past the last wave. However, this enchantment turn is entirely based around luck in regards to hitting the right zombies, causing them to turn, and knowing me and my luck,
I guess you could call me a bad luck charm.
But I already had the concept that this was indeed possible down, so I just kept throwing enchantments at the last wave, hoping that it would save me. I even managed to save the acquired plant fruit I got through the waves, so I could throw it all into refreshing enchantment at the final waves, pushing me over the edge, though ironically the final success was actually me just barely making it to the final wave, with most of my lawnmowers intact, causing me to kind of just win by default. Whatever, it's done. Day 31, survive with the given plants, I don't even have a joke for this one. And day 32, Zomboss shows up, so we both compare sizes in the bathroom, and just like that, we're done with Lost City. And now we're on to Far Future, the world with pre-installed power tiles. So naturally, since Daisy Chain's ultimate isn't that good, we were going to usually try and probably get Spore Shrooms on all these tiles as fast as possible, since they're the only ones with powerful damage attacks for them, or even Sundew Tanglers to generate capital. And Far Future does have a few humps we will have to worry about too with their all-powerful mechs, coming as early as the second day, as well as having the best all-around imps of any world. We were going to need to remain diligent and prioritize Spore Shroom even more than we did in the last world because of it. On day 4, we had sun bombs, but in all honesty, this kind of just assists us, considering our current sun production is pretty low anyways, as long as we wait long enough before activating them. Day 5, we already have the cone mechs, which is heavy armor, so our main way of dealing with them will be daisy chains and combining it with Spore Shroom's plant food. Day 6, she repick on my plants till I survive with only. Day 7 was a carbon copy of Day 5, like down to the letter with how similar it was. Like, literally I noticed zero change. Day 8 was the Ultimate Battle World. Dude, I miss the Ultimate Battle music for Plants vs. Zombies 2 so much. Day 9 was never have more than 15 plants, which translates to plant nothing but daisy chain. Yeah, you can probably guess how this day went. Day 10 introduced yet another mech, which we attempt to counter with the Spore Shroom Horde, but it was really daisy chain's mustard gas attacks that won the hearts of the people. Day 11 was a plan your defense. I predicted no issues with it, and I also successfully rolled a cauliflower, so I figured I'd just use it here so I could put it in the thumbnails again, and it completed the day in probably world record pace. Day 12 introduced the Gargantuar mechs, and this isn't even the last of their mechs either, with us once again barely inching out a win towards the end, due to nothing more than daisy chain's mustard gas onslaught. Day 13 introduced the worst mech of all, who pushes plants down the line until it successfully pushes it off the edge, and because this, it is an extreme danger to any plant. That isn't Sundew Tangler, because once again for some reason Sundew Tangler is the physical embodiment of all immortality. Day 14 spend no more than 1,500 sun, so that translates to...
Daisy, Daisy.
Day 15, protect the endangered plants, which was 3 citrons right in front of the zombies. Surprisingly, I was able to first try this mission just with having daisy chains behind them in the back lane, stun stalling while also spamming the citron's ultimate abilities whenever the baddies came near. Day 16 was a conveyor belt mission, Day 17 was a pre-picked mission, and I still can't believe it's not butter. Day 18 was a produce 6,000 sun, and once again I tried it using Sundew Tangler, but once again it just can't be done. Even with the power tiles, it's still just not enough to get all the sun we need. Even with Solar Sage, this day is still barely doable. It's just the sun requirement is so violently tanking here, and there's just no way around it. Day 19 is Sun Bombs, which means we skip Sundew Tangler and go straight to Daisy Chain Spore Shroom, and the world is done before we know it. Day 20, protect a column of Starfruit. I don't remember if I struggled on this one with Summoner's playthrough, but Daisy Chain definitely renders threats of imps both trying to rush past the mowers and the zombie mechs eating the fruits to be fairly irrelevant. Day 21, produce 5,000 sun, and don't have more than 16 plants. I originally just daisy chained this once again, but then I forgot that I also needed to make the sun.
I can't remember me.
We already did this in the Summoner's playthrough. We just used Solar Sage on the zombies and absolutely spam it, and within a few minutes we have the whole sun requirement down. Day 22, plan your defense, and they give me exactly 2,250 sun, which directly translates to 3 columns of
Daisy.
But yeah, Daisy Chain, level 3 and 3 rows of them is more than competent damage to put the mechs in their place over time. Day 23, never have more than 15 plants and 2,250 sun. I wonder what plant in my arsenal would perfectly fit 3 columns to do
Daisy.
Day 24 was Sun Bomba again, which gave me plenty of money to deal with the overwhelming force of mechanoids Randy Random decided to send at me, but overall it wasn't that close of a fight with all my forces working in tandem, but after that I was done with Far Future since the only thing left to do now was throw a spear into Dr. Zomboss's mech. Hello everybody, and welcome to part 4 of beating plants vs. zombies with only parasites. Previously, we finished Frostbite Caves, pillaged Lost City, and had mech battles in the far future, leaving us with only 5 worlds left, and I'm not gonna lie, we cut it pretty close this time around. Starting in the Dark Ages, the world where the red sun isn't over paradise, and the best part about Dark Ages is we get to finally use Tomb Tangler again, and once again, I know it has been completely unusable for the majority of this world's days, partly due to it not being a high enough level to be used on other objects, but Tomb Tangler proves to be a superhuman strength, again instantly nabbing me all the sun on the sun graves, allowing me to survive off of them and maintain the remaining sun I need with Sundew Tanglers. Though on as early as day 3 we have to bring Solar Sage back again, however I decided that since this probably wasn't the last time I would need it, that I would additionally challenge myself in worlds by if I need to use Solar Sage, I will originally try to only use just a single one. Once again, this isn't part of the actual challenge, just something additional objectives for fun. Jester zombies also make their debut here, which grab standard projectiles and hurl them back at plants. Though Tomb Tangler and Daisy Chain's gas clears up that little problem, and we overall just smoothly sailed with nothing really of note happening until day 6, where it was a plan your defense, which was resolved with 2 rows of Daisy Chains, and using the already set graves to make Tomb Tangler barriers from the Jesters. Pretty easy day all around. Day 7, we fail automatically due to no tombstones, meaning we need to use a single solar sage to get us started until we can get a Sundew Tangler. Then we just absolutely spam the out of Tomb Tanglers and placing Sundew Tanglers in front of them to help us not starve to death from the sun. Also, the Knights make their debut here, but since Tomb Tangler and Sundew both ignore armor, it was a non-issue at the present moment. Day 8, survive with the given plants. More like survive with Day 9, we had our first Evil Potions day, which significantly buffs any zombie that walks over them, but more importantly, it blocks Tomb Tangler and Sundew, and spawns them further down the line if they can't spawn on the leftmost. I actually failed the first time because of that and Necromancy, but I kept spamming Tomb Tangler anyways and just won the second time. Additionally, I decided that Day 9 was where we would introduce the next member of our team, Magnet Shroom, which will help us deal with bucket heads and other nonsense through the rest of the playthrough. How it qualifies as a parasite, though, as there is a form of parasitism where the parasite exclusively steals from the other hosts, refusing to give any benefit in return, or just out physically performing them to steal their resources. This is known as kleptoparasitism, aka Detroitism. We were introduced to the wizard zombies on day 11, which are pretty dangerous, but once again, for some reason, Sundew Tangler is just never targeted. Day 12 was protect puff shrooms, which I failed twice, because I kept horribly mismanaging my plant food in order to refresh them, so they don't pull a Warbucks main. But a horde of Daisy Chains in the background and spamming Tomb Tanglers and Sundews once more, we were able to get it on our 3rd try. Day 13 was a conveyor belt that's running for Prime Minister in the United Kingdom, and Day 14 is a forcibly stun-locked mission, with only Sunbeam and Tombstones able to make the sun required, and you need to use both of them to get past the sunlock. I actually went back to my Summoner's playthrough to remember what my verdict for this day was, but I barely even mentioned it there, so I'm just gonna say since it is forcibly sun-blocked, and it doesn't count in regards to the sun part, as it's a gimmick level that forces the sun to be made only one way.
You're a liar, and you will spend an eternity on this ship.
Day 15 was a plan your defense, and I mean, we all know what I ended up doing, but I already did the Daisy Bell joke twice now, so just pretend I said something else funny or made another original meme here. Day 16, I was just very indecisive. I originally restarted because there were no tombstones, so I grabbed a Solar Sage. Then I restarted again because I saw Sun Tombstones spawn in later, and then I lost a 3rd time because I realized it wasn't possible without Solar Sage, and I beat it the final time with absolutely no problems. Also, this world introduced King Zombies, but we only have a few days left anyway. Day 17, more potions, but there were 8 whole Sun Tombstones at the start, with more spawning throughout, so we never had an issue defending against the rising hordes, and made it out pretty perfectly. Day 18, a second survive with the given plants has hit the Dark Ages, and Day 19 was protect the endangered Magnet Shrooms, which I failed the first 2 times due to Tomb Tangler being very selective for when they decide to murder people. 3rd time around, we just prioritize heavy defenses on all 3 Magnet Shroom rows, and just let the Gargantuars take the mowers at the last part. And with Day 20 being the fight where Zomba shows up with a slut dragon who won't stop talking about skateboarding, we were done with the Dark Ages. And now we were on to Neon Mixtape Tour, one of the harder worlds due to the whole music upgrades for faster zombies, and their vicious varieties that throw hammers into our plans. Early on, we won't have to worry about this, or at least I thought, and we employ the Spore Shroom strat early on for the free additional shooters, and the first few days obviously have nothing too dangerous for us, though there is one gimmick I should mention. The punk rock zombies who kick plants around are affected by Magnet Shroom too, and will actually just instantly die to their attack, making Magnet Shrooms an effective way of dealing with them altogether. However, we meet our first big hurdle on as early as Day 5, where we have to protect 4 different plants. And with low, inadequate sun production, we saw several losses through both Fat Beats getting overwhelmed and punk rock zombies kicking the walnuts into orbit. Though, unsurprisingly, Magnet Shroom actually ended up being what saved us from impending doom, with Daisy Chain doing the rest of the work. Day 6 was the conveyor belt mission who has led to the deaths of several employees due to OSHA violations. Day 7, I also failed multiple times due to the mass hordes of buckets and cones, and I just couldn't keep up. So at this point, I decided to once again recruit Enchantment to the team to help with the shortcomings and help us push through. I was also getting concerned because this was only Day 7 and already the second day I was dealing with making it through. Day 8, I also failed the first time, it being the introduction of roller skates, but it wasn't nearly as bad as I just made it through with more buffs. Day 9, survive with the given plants? No, but I'll give them something else. Day 10, conveyor belt mission. Day 11, pre-picked plants. And day 12 was the introduction of the Gargantuar, which is actually one of the most dangerous of all the Gargantuars due to its ranged one-shot attack. We destroyed all the other zombies and just used an enchantment on them. Day 13 was another plan your defense day, and we do the standard Daisy, Daisy, Bell, but followed up with a third column of magnet shrooms, which is just barely enough to get us through the day without an issue, as it definitely got close at some parts. Day 14 was a pre-picked plants wave. I started writing another theory the other day. Day 15 was another protect your plants with a full column of fat beats. We lost the first time around due to not having enough weapons on them early on, though the second time around, after we got the sundews down and some daisy chains, we were able to eviscerate the roller skates before they became a problem. Day 16 was the ultimate battle wave. That was the monster you see in the corner of your eyes when you fall asleep. Day 17 introduced the imps again, and this day was pretty close, but we did end up getting it on our first try, just barely through, though, with only 2 lawnmowers left. And day 18 was super close too, with me once again surviving with only 2 lawnmowers left. The real debate being between using Sundew Tangler or not, to make up more sun over time, or just get the daisy chains and be done with it. Day 19, conveyor belt. Pretend I crashed out here for like 5 minutes. Day 20 was another rough one where I failed the first and second time due to one specific thing, not really anything in specific, though the solution was just locking in and tactically placing the magnet shrooms and getting daisy chains up fully as fast as possible. Day 21, oh, cutter, no, don't look. Day 21 was bad. It was a don't trample the flowers mission, and that alone is pretty bad because it has some of the faster zombies here. Combine this with the whole hordes and these freaking breakdancing zombies constantly throwing them over the edge, and even kicking zombies off of Sundew's vines, causing the zombie that was still tangled to be temporarily invincible. And Vampircini's failing to set up in time almost every single time, with virtually no help of me making it through this. Thus, I had to ask for help from Solar Sage again, but even with that, I was still losing some days, and I barely came out with a win, only getting lucky because a breakdancer zombie threw another zombie over the flowers, causing it to set off my other lawnmower dealing with the other big Gargantuar. Day 22 was a conveyor belt mission, but it actually did have spore shrooms, but since I was already struggling hard, I didn't bother redoing to see if this day was possible with only spore shrooms, as we've already established that it doesn't count. Day 23 being our first real fight with the nerd zombie in his arcade. Now we actually have a way to deal with him completely without his arcade machine ever becoming an issue, but I'll explain later as I didn't have a chance to do it here. Day 24 was a plan your defense wave, which went about the way you'd expect, but with Gargantuars at the end though, the lawnmowers dealt with them, thus another first try mission. Day 25 was just another nerd battle fight of attrition. Nothing really of note here, though I will say Sundew Tangler is great at stalling and disrupting his whole act. And day 26 being a defense spore shrooms day, which I probably lost the first time due to incompetence, though it really wasn't that bad of a day, with me just changing my strategy around a little, placing magnet shrooms and letting the lawnmower deal with the Gargantuar at the end. Day 27, conveyor belt mission explains Five Nights at Freddy's lore.
Dude, I swear if Freddy Fazbear tries to sell me insurance again, I'm gonna screw.
And day 28 was the other big bad, which introduces the Boombog zombie, who, when he reaches a certain point, will stun most plants on the map. Ironically, though, he is not the worst thing here. It's the freaking nerd zombies and the rest of the horde they summon that destroys everything. However, I did mention that I have a solution for them, and that solution is, since they can't push their arcades over Sundew Tangler, you can actually plant them at the lowermost column and subsequently prevent them from ever using their arcade machine to begin with. This did not make this day easy by any means, but none of this was so far, so the day's done. Whatever, moving on. Day 29, I failed twice just because I didn't hit the Sundew Tangler block for the nerds in time, which I promptly crashed out and restarted both times, but the third time around I got it, and the Gargantuar at the end was never making it past the mower. Day 30 was never have more than 15 plants. This actually translated to an easier day, with the only close part being the Gargantuar I stun-locked promptly with daisy chains at the end. And with day 31 being survive with the given plants, and day 32 being the boss fight where Zomboss puts a bunch of slurs over a rap song about one of his ex-boyfriend's dongs or something, we were done with the Neon Mixtape tour. And we're on to Jurassic Marsh, and I knew from the very get-go that this was going to be bad. Day 1 went fine, but on as early as day 2, we already face our first multi-loss, as there are entire packs of bucket and bonehead zombies, all along the way being kicked further by raptors. Yeah, I can deal with the bucket heads using Magnet Shroom, but the boner heads, I'm kind of left with only Sundew Tangler and possibly 2 Daisy Chains. This is really bad for us, and keep in mind, this is also with enchantment on standby. Day 4 is decent, with us able to first try using Daisy Chains and Magnet Shrooms, though it was close with us losing 2 of our 5 lawnmowers. Day 5 went pretty much the same as Day 4, with me consistently utilizing Sundew Tangler to swallow Boneheads whole. And Day 6 also went the same, but significantly closer, with me losing over half my lawnmowers and having to do some quick time recycling in order to stop the remaining zombies. Day 7, don't trample the flowers, and it's a conveyor belt mission. And Day 8 is where I decide to introduce the next parasite onto our team. Now, a lot of people probably guessed the next member because, well, I mentioned it earlier, but we are going to be welcoming Perfume Shroom to the team to not only spawn an additional raptor, but take over any dinosaurs in that row, as kind of like with cauliflower, it has a symbiotic relationship with the dinosaurs, utilizing them for its own defensive means. Oh, by the way, I had a bunch of comments telling me that I was wrong for calling parasitism a symbiotic relationship, and they believe symbiosis is only when both parties benefit, and although that does have a social definition for it, this actually isn't true in regards to biology, as symbiotic in biology is defined as 2 organisms or parties in close relationship or association with each other. This relationship is not mutually beneficial, and there are actually 3 types of symbiotic relationships. Mutualism, where both parties benefit, commensalism, where one party benefits and the other isn't affected, and parasitism, where one party benefits and the other is harmed. I implore you to not just nerd react post this. Day 14 was survived with a given plan. Day 15, we had a Is somebody mowing their f***ing lawn? We had a Gargantuar on the way, but fortunately that was really only the big bad, and we just plant food, refresh, and enchantment, and the day is done. Day 16 is the ultimate battle day. Sometimes I hear screaming when I fart really loud. Day 17, raptors and more boneheads, but there's nothing really of significance here, as I was just able to first try it no issue. Day 18 was a little bit rough, as it was half a dozen of the T-Rex dinosaurs, who are very strangely cute for some reason. Their ability, instead of directly moving the zombies like other dinosaurs, provides them with a speed buff that persists until they stop to eat a plant. This is really bad, but I still maintain that Ankylosaurus is worse, for now at least. Day 19, I was saved from a horrific fate with the Burning Love of the Conveyor Belt mission. Day 20, produce X amount of sun translates to a valid excuse for me to use Solar Sage, outside of it being absolutely necessary. And Day 21, I think, is possibly the day that almost came close to making this challenge all hands on deck, as I failed this one 5 times, as their Jurassic bullies can't be Magnet Shroom like Boneheads, and they take a truckload of damage to put down, which are also being constantly forced along the line by T-Rexes, giving me very little time to fight all of the unstoppable forces with only enchantment, and even with Perfume Shroom, able to provide me with instant KOs as well. So naturally, the eventual solution to this was just another instant KO plant, being Cauliflower, who seduced all the zombies with monkey hypnosis, being just barely enough to survive the wave. I mean, this literally, even with Cauliflower, we barely made it out of this though. Day 22, I planned your defense wave, but with 2 daisy chain rows, a few magnet shrooms, and a column of more expensive, less useful walnuts, we were able to barely inch out a no lawnmower loss win. Day 23 was the all-hands-on-deck day, as it was the day where I officially had to put Solar Sage back on the team, even though they're obnoxiously powerful. Reason being, I just don't think this one is possible without some larger level of capital backing for the parasites, as they just aren't fast and powerful enough on their own. And this is even beyond using it a single time, as even that wasn't enough. So I rewired the Solar Sage added challenge by making the new challenge, if I am using it, I am not allowed to lose a single lawnmower, which was still a vicious challenge, but we did make it through Day 23 eventually. Day 24 was a loss the first time around, but overall didn't have too much of an added difficulty increase or decrease, and we were able to get it a second time around, partially thanks to Pteranodons screwing their own side over. Day 25 introduced the Ankylos, and even with the new Solar Sage rules, and with Perfume Shroom, this fight was really rough. The whole Ankylo punching zombies all the way across the map, and then bonking back any plant that collides with it while flying, and overall just being very, very insufferable to deal with. I already made the King Crimson joke last playthrough though. I did eventually get through it too, due to just spamming Solar Sage and Perfume Shroom as soon as I got it, but even then I was straight up sweating through the whole process. And day 26 was almost insurmountably horrid, as well as having ankylos and mold colonies in the back, meaning if a zombie gets bonked over, I have roughly 2 tiles to react before they make it to the shed of no return. Ironically, in these situations, half the time the Pteranodons ended up being more helpful, as they were turning the more armored ones around, permanently ruining them. Though it was really me just daisy chain Vampircini comboing in desperate attempts to block off the zombies until I can solar stage them again, or finish them off in some other way. Ultimately, it took forever, and it was the third big hard day within the past 5 days, but I stopped the zombies from making it to the shed beyond the fence.
They call it the Shed of No Return. Oh, how ominous.
Day 27 was another Plan Your Defenses day, and it was actually the first one of these we failed in a while. Fortunately, it was just due to me being a goofball, and the second try I was able to turn it around and make it through relatively well with no further problems. Day 28, with Solar Sage to our arsenal, we were massing up an army of daisy chains, which allowed us to essentially stunlock the oppositional gargantuars with massive damage. I might not have even needed Solar Sage for this one, but given how much of a nightmare Jurassic Marsh was, I wasn't about to redo it. Day 29, survived without asking what Grab-A-Han is. Day 30 had multiple gargantuars, but once again Daisy Chain is just strong enough to stop them, and if they weren't, we had enchantment. And with Day 31 being yet another survive with the given plants, and Day 32 Dr. Zomba showing up in the Whipposaurus, we were officially done with the hardest world so far, yet that actually made me finally have to fully take Solar Sage onto the team in order to make it through.
Yes. Now, Mr. Knuckles. Hypnotize. Hypnotize.
Hello everybody, and welcome back to part 5 of beating Plants vs. Zombies with only parasites. Previously, we got through Dark Ages fairly easily, busted inside of Neon Mixtape Tour, and had to throw everything we had in order to beat Jurassic Marsh, which currently stood as the most difficult world so far. But with only 2 worlds left, we got going into Big Wave Beach, and starting out we very predictably had no issues, as it doesn't get into the real gimmick of this world until some days in. It was even easier than Jurassic Marsh, which still stood as the hardest world so far. Plus, it really just won't affect us regardless early on, as I'm just going to be planting Daisy Chain in the opening days. Nothing really of note happened, with already 2 conveyor belt missions, and the other general missions just being pretty easy, up until day 6, where we get another most of the plants picked for us, limiting us to only 2 seed slots. I go for Daisy Chain and Enchantment, and the zombies got kind of close, but since I didn't lose a single lawnmower...
Not close enough.
And with day 7 being entirely unprotected from water, I decided it would be a perfect time to introduce the next parasite and the final member of our team. Granted, there were other potential parasite plants, and a rather new plant at that, known as Snake Lily. Now, Snake Lily is probably one of the coolest concepts for a plant I've seen in this game, and I was really disappointed that I didn't unlock it for the Summoner's playthrough. Essentially, Snake Lily is a close-range plant with only 2 or 3 tiles, though can target any row lane. After a random amount of time, it will fire a tornado that can home in on any zombie, though usually prioritizing the farthest left, which will then transform the zombie into a Zoy Zombie variant. This will usually just be the standard Zoy Zombie, but sometimes, and if plant fooded, the Zoy Zombie can also turn out as a carrot head, melon head, and if only plant fooded, you can also get a Zoygantuar potentially. This is dependent on the zombie targeted, but it's also kind of just random, as I had mixed results through pretty much the whole usage of it. Day 9 is don't plant on the mold colonies, and Snake Lily with their all-lane attack already proved itself as an invaluable asset, as even though I can't plant Sundew Tangler very effectively during Big Wave Beach, it's no longer the end of the world, as I can just use Snake Lily to cover all bases early game. All in all, we had no problem. Day 10 was a conveyor belt that refused to let me let go of the past. Day 11 was another most of the plants pick for me, so I once again went Snake Lily, and largely only used it to defend. Also, sometimes when a Snake Lily fires, if its target is hit by another tornado early on, their tornado will then sometimes arc to another target if it's close enough. Day 12 Plan Your Defense Day, so I went Snake Lily and Daisy Chain, and they very unsurprisingly evaporated the offense and worked well together. Day 13 produced X amount of sun, and I kind of just assumed I wouldn't be able to do this with only Sundew Tangler, so Solar Sage it was, and we predictably won pretty effortlessly. Day 14, survive with the given plant. Guess what my next theory is going to be about here. And day 15 was the first big bad day, as it's a protect the endangered plants, which has us defending a bunch of potato mines from prematurely busting. And it revealed to me pretty early on that, although powerful, Snake Lily is not infallible or overpowered by any means. I could comment on how Snake Lily has a pretty low fire rate, I could comment on how having many of them at once often causes shots to not go through properly, and I could even comment on that when spawned, the Zoe zombie they make will likely just lose due to its activation time being slow enough for another zombie to just eat them before they can attack most of the time. But overall, what's the most egregious is the complete randomness of their attacks, and with only really 1.5 tile to react because the potato mines are on the other tile, Snake Lily's really main flaw comes out here. I would have just used Daisy Chain, but Snake Lily is once again the only plant that can row all the lanes, though I did eventually start using them towards the end just for their stopping power. All in all, miserable experience, but we persisted. Day 16, Ultimate Battle Wave that caused me to feel nostalgia for Ultimate Battle music. Day 17 introduced Octopus Zombie, probably the most dangerous disabler in the game. Now, Snake Lily can target him and one-shot him with its plant food, but unless they are plant fooded, we have to wait until he gets in range, and by then he will have already thrown several octopi. Not the end of the world early on, but it definitely might be later. Day 18 was a conveyor belt who tried to lecture me about some clanker nonsense.
My body is a machine that turns.
Day 19, another most of the plants picked for me. This time I took Daisy Chain with Snake Lily, as I thought it would help with Octo Zombie. It gave the idea that it was helping by at least trying to break the squids off of the Snake Lily, but it was really the plant food that won the hearts of the people. Day 20 revealed another big flaw of Snake Lily, as much like Guard Shroom, even though they're powerful, Snake Lily has absolutely zero survival instincts, and will often allow itself to be murdered while targeting a different zombie. We did get it the second try, but it was annoying that Snake Lilies will literally just sit there and take it half the time.
Iggy, get out of here! He's still alive!
Day 21 is a conveyor belt that causes you to forget about it whenever you talk about it. Day 22, I don't know why we skipped Day 21, but Day 22 introduced the fishing zombie, which is another really dangerous zombie as it will pull the closest plant right one space every few seconds, eventually either pulling it into the water or removing it from play. Fortunately, we have the perfect defense against this, Sundew Tangler, who is immune to it as well as everything else on the planet. But this will definitely be something we have to look out for now. Day 23, protect the endangered. Oh hey, these are pretty cool bananas. Which, since I didn't have any comically large Game Boys, I failed twice. First due to the Gargantuosity, and the second time due to the aforementioned fishing zombie. Third time around, we just puppy guarded using Sundew Tangler again, and utilizing the bananas really only to deal with the Gargantuars and Octo Zombies, and just like that, the problem is dealt with. Day 24 was a conveyor belt that's making me question why I didn't talk about Day 21 again. Day 25, spend no more than 3,000 sun and kill 10 zombies in 5 seconds. And I think this is the one day in the entire game where the X zombies and X seconds mission is actually difficult, mainly because I don't have any proper explosives. Fortunately, Snake Lily's ultimate being spammed enough is just enough to beat the secondary objective. Day 26, why are we talking about Day 26? I want to know what happened on Day 21. Day 27, another most plants picked, and the whole map is underwater, though we still pick Snake Lily and begin stockpiling sun. The thing about plant food is that it will affect both the Snake Lily and the lily pad, allowing us to spread lily pads for more Snake Lilies, and to distract the fisherman zombies. Plus, all the plant food tornadoes are good to assassinate the zombies as well, and we were able to first try it. Day 28 was a don't lose more than 5 plants, where I made the discovery that if you plant Sundew Tangler on a lily pad, that the lily pad also becomes invincible, allowing me to make a sort of bulwark out of all the lily pads, which would additionally protect me from the fisher zombies, and ultimately because of that we first tried the day. Day 21, plan your defense, but the entire map is underwater, and there's only a few lily pads, so we have to play very tactically with our plant food, using it to launch whole clusters of armored Zoe zombies from multiple Snake Lilies into the horde, while also taking advantage of the lily pads the plant food creates, to then capitalize our forces. Surprisingly enough, I actually first tried this day too. Day 30 is protect some endangered crocodiles, where one gets sniped very early on due to a fishing zombie. Second time around though, we introduce our immortal friend Sundew Tangler again, and that clears up that little issue. We do sweat a little bit because of both octo-zombies and gargantuars, but ultimately we spam enough and spend our pre-use lawnmower on the garg, and all is well. Day 31 is given plants, and day 32, Dr. Zomboss tries to lecture me that King a shark is completely reasonable because he thinks they look soft, even though placoid scales are sharp like sandpaper, and just like that we were done with Big Wave Beaches, a world that I thought would have been impossible without Snake Lily, but just like motivational lizards, Snake Lily slithered their way into our hearts right when the time came. On to modern day, we actually lose a lawnmower on the very first day, largely just because I wasn't prepared for a football mech and a comb mech in the very first day, but it's not the end of the world or anything. We do the next day perfectly fine too, so hopefully this wouldn't turn into something unmanageable early on. And moving through, our main strategy was to just get some tanglers down before defending with a single Snake Lily, allowing us to get some breathing room to get some daisy chains up. It was going well, and we even started using perfume shrooms to seduce dinosaurs into one-tapping stuff for us, though we also still had enchantment for those final gargantuars. Day 6, you know damn well I tried at least once with just Sundew Tangler, but we go back to Solar Sage afterwards, and we very quickly punch through the whole thing without a second thought. Day 7, I get cucked by octo-zombies early on, which causes me to lose inevitably in the last stretch of the day. Fortunately, my loss was just due to me being a big, dumb, stupid idiot, and saving my lawnmowers till the end, we were able to get it the second time with no issue. Day 8, you can't make me play this again, I literally made a theory that included Bejeweled in it. Day 9, I finally get to use Tomb Tangler again, never mind, it's a pretty big plants day.
Asshat!
Day 10, I lost twice, first due to a bunch of weasels I failed to deactivate, and another time just due to a gargantuar, but the third time around I was able to fulfill my plan of just popping down a Snake Lily and 2 Sundew Tanglers all on the power tiles, and completely producing Sun to blast the zombies down. Day 11, reintroduced piano zombies, who I ultimately decided to deal with using daisy chains, as it worked in the Wild West, though I also had to deal with the football mechs, who took significantly more bullets. Still though, we got it the first try. Day 12, don't lose more than 10 plants. Fortunately hard to do when you don't even use more than 10 plants half the time. We get through the world utilizing the lawnmowers, mostly at the end, and using a dinosaur to dropkick the gargantuar into orbit. Day 13, Bejeweled lore is probably really complex. Day 14, given plants, never forget what happened on day 21. Day 15 is protecting some endangered primal walnuts, so the no-brainer response for me is to plant snake lilies behind them so they can pick off the zombies, while still being mostly able to protect themselves. One of the walnuts gets close, but a quick plant food turns them into a rock and that solves all our problems. Day 16 was the ultimate battle day where I immediately tried to electric shock every living thing I could, but the game wouldn't let me. Day 17, no big deal, some nerd zombies showed up, but they forgot they were playing an EA game and that they needed to pay money for a DLC so that their arcade machine spawned zombies. Day 18, we got balloon zombies and bulls, which the bulls do actually almost get me twice, because for some reason they can't be turned into snake lilies, but we managed to turn it around with some enchantments and plant food spam and make it through with one lawnmower to spare. And day 19 was the conveyor belt that turned Miss Peaches into cat food.
If it's the last thing you see me,
Day 20, I don't remember if imps were coming because I couldn't be bothered to pay attention, but I saw the sun tiles and thought, ah, free sun for me, so I utilized them as such and got through the day fairly easily. Day 21, the introduction of the football zombies, and these are some of the more intimidating forces. However, once you stop their charge, they become infinitely less intimidating, and from their snake lily, then it does its thing. Day 22 was a conspiracy theory to debunk the secrets of Big Wave Beaches Day 21. Day 23, more octo-zombies, and this time they brought their big pink estrogen fish gargantuars with them, but a little bit of enchantment breaks their minds down, and we were once again able to first try the last wave by forcing enchantment target. Day 24, we got some more power tiles, so I Snake Lily and Sundew Tangler comboed again, though one of the football zombies drop-kicked a terrorist imp onto the snake, which caused me to lose most of my mowers, but we managed to pull through in the end. Day 25 was the conveyor belt that you always wished you could be. Day 26, the piano zombie makes a comeback along with the disco mech, and even the neon mixtape gargantuar comes and threatened to destroy my lawnmowers in the end. Fortunately, we had this little tool called enchantment. Day 27, I unironically despise these days so much. Day 28, produced 3000 Sun, we all know what happened. I tried and failed with Sundew Tangler, then came back and beat it with Solar Sage, and that was that. Day 29, there were a bunch of tombs already on the map, and tomb spawner zombies later on the wave, meaning Tomb Tangler finally gets to make a comeback himself, and unsurprisingly, even on the last world, Tomb Tangler is a very competitive and useful plant, helping us stall and eat the lesser zombies while waiting for me to finish off the guards. And Day 30 was the last big hurdle of this race, prevent the zombies from trampling the flowers with only 3 tiles of grace, and Gargantuars spawning in 2 of the 3 waves. That's not even accounting for the balloon and football zombies, who are going to rush down your lanes as fast as they possibly can, and instantly throw a game over. And I wanted to resist not using Solar Sage for this last day, as I did believe that somehow it might have been possible if every attack and hypnotization went absolutely perfectly, but seeing the final wave with pretty much nothing left and 3 different problems to deal with, I came to the conclusion that this is likely another world where it's mathematically impossible to do without Solar Sage. And beginning again, it's pretty hard to do even with Solar Sage, as I lost several times even using the thing again. It's just the simple lack of time you have to defend everything in time, combined Gargantuars at the end that, even if you rush through it using Snake Lily, you will ultimately fail. Fortunately, this is just barely possible, as it takes some luck with enchantment, some forced luck with enchantment, and spamming Daisy Chain enough so it can stunlock the Gargantuars to death, but I did eventually make it through after stalling them for millions of years. And with Day 31 being the last part of the race, as in there's no hurdles left, you just have to cross the finish line. In other words, the hard part's over, you still need to finish. Day 31 is pretty easy, comparatively, with nothing really capable of stopping me from completing the day. The Explorer Torch Zombie, the first hurdle of the challenge, comes back for one final attack, but he's not getting past me, and a few minutes later I beat the day without losing a single lawnmower. And with the only thing left for me to do was being to report Dr. Zomboss to the IRS, we were officially done with the Parasites Only challenge, and this one was much more difficult, albeit equally interesting as the Summoners Only run. But to answer the question, can you beat Plants vs. Zombies 2 with only parasites? The answer is yes. There were points early on where I didn't think that this would be possible, but once you get past the Sun production missions on Pirate Seas, you can come to a definite conclusion on whether or not a world will be possible, and I think now that I've done a few challenges for it in their entirety, I could make this an occasional additional event on the channel, but I have several other things on the roster, so for now, until then, I guess you could say I'm awaiting assignment. But if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more like it, please leave me a comment down below letting me know your thoughts as well as what you would like to see next, both Plants vs. Zombies and otherwise. And if you're new here, please consider subscribing as I upload new long-form content every week, as well as new shorts most every day encapsulating variety content, including challenges, guides, memes, audience participation, playthroughs, and even theories. Also, join the Discord with a link in the description, as well as the pinned comment to become part of the show. But with that being said, thank you all again so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.